So I'm really excited to be able to bring this topic to all of you. We quite a story behind this. I've been thinking about this topic for about a year and have found it to be really important. So let's get right to the PowerPoint and we'll talk about what relevance means. So my first kind of introduction to this happened about a year ago, early in the pandemic situation, where we discovered here at Sierra Tucson that we needed to do some communication. And so my boss said we need to put something out that lets everyone know that we are responding to the pandemic and kind of allay some people's fears around coming to Sierra Tucson. So I jumped right in, said, okay, wrote up something, sent it to her. We agreed on it, put it out. A little while later, I got an email from someone who said, you should have run that by me. And I was a little taken back, and I said, okay, I'm really sorry. Didn't realize that was something I should have done. And I went back to my boss and said, hey, this is what I got. And she made a comment that was very interesting to me. She said, that person wasn't relevant. And I kind of looked at her and she said, she's not making herself relevant. And I kind of tucked that away and I've been thinking on it for the whole year. What makes someone relevant? What is relevance itself? And so as I got to thinking a little bit about it, I kind of explored what the definition is. So the strict dictionary definition is the quality or state of being closely connected or appropriate relation to the matter at hand, practical and especially social applicability, the ability to retrieve material that satisfies the needs of the user. So we think a lot about relevance as it's in relationship to concepts or subject matter or things. So let me give you a couple of examples. What if I gave a gift to Lila, our hostess here on the webinar? I have a certain kind of china that I like, old country roses, really pretty. But if it's not something that she has or she likes, that gift is not relevant. Let me give you another example. Early in the pandemic, my husband decided that since our daughters were both with their families at home, the kids didn't have a lot to do. He researched and found these little roll-up piano keyboards. So he bought one. He bought three of them actually. Sent one to each of my daughters and their families, and one for us. Now, my daughter Crystal, they didn't have a piano, but they love music and they liked to play piano. So for them, that gift was very relevant. Jackie's family had a piano and they liked to play the piano. So the gift's relevance was a little bit less important to them. For us, I can't play the piano, neither can my husband. So the gift is irrelevant. So looking at it from that point of view, you can understand relevance, but that's a thing or a concept or something like that. Think about it with relationship to people. So I love to sing. I am pretty good at it. I sing alto. That does not have a whole lot of relevance at my job here at Sierra Tucson. It doesn't have a whole lot of relevance at home because I don't really sing in a choir at home. But when I'm out in the choir, it has a lot of relevance. So sometimes it has to do with your position or the context of what you're looking at. So I started looking at these questions. What goes into being relevant? How do you stay relevant? How can some people be relevant and others not be? Is it a generational issue? Or is it an educational issue? Or is it a societal issue? Think about the fact that as um, an older person, you have certain experiences that may or may not be relevant to the people around you. My father never could figure out how to use a smartphone. My mom uses a smartphone. And so he could not relate to the grandkids, and his experience with the smartphone was not relevant. Um, so looking at the question from this point of view, kind of with these questions in mind, think about what it is. Relevance is the importance, the significance, the connection, the pertinence, the application. Being relevant is being appropriate within the context of what you're working in. So, for instance, if you're a therapist and you're working in a counseling center or you have a private practice, that's relevant. Your counseling isn't necessarily relevant when you go to the grocery store, for instance. So, looking at things from a bigger scheme and how we stay relevant as our world changes. And believe me, in this past year, we've had a lot of changes in our world. And things that for instance, I normally would have done are no longer the most important thing to do. So being able to adapt or change or look at your relevance from that bigger perspective, that grander plan, so to speak, is really important as things change. In the business world, it means being a part of your organization or your company, of the economy of the future. Let me give you a couple of examples that I have run into. So, Christine is one of my employees, one of my staff. She is really smart. She came in to Sierra Tucson as a administrative assistant. However, as things have changed over the course of the 3 years she's been here, she has made herself available to do different things. When the pandemic started, she jumped in and helped us set up communication logs and logs of contact exposure and writing policies and doing any number of things. The other thing that Christine has done is every time that we have a conversation, she says, let me know if there's anything I can do to help you. So she may not know what is needed, but she's always available. And so we have come to rely on her as we have wandered through this pandemic situation, because we know that she will keep herself relevant to what our needs are. Let me give you another example. John is our mailroom guy. His job 2 years ago entailed picking up paper charts and moving them from one part of the campus to another part of the campus, as well as managing our mailroom, bringing, logging mail in and packages in and getting them out to the people that they were addressed to. Seems like a simple job. 2 years ago, we started working on an electronic health record. Electronic health record is really good for us. It means that we don't have to lug those paper charts around. Guess what? 3/4 of John's job was moving those paper charts around. John came to me and he said, Sue, I'm not going to be able to do this. This isn't going to be relevant anymore. And so I want to do, and he lined out a whole new thing for him to do, and that was take over our supply chain. And he became our purchaser and our central supply person. So he looked at what the company's needs were, the organization's needs were, found that the job that he was doing was going to change, and he needed to change into something else, and he carved that path. Courtney worked really well on a variety of things with that had to do with marketing. But as we went into this pandemic and we were no longer going out to people, Courtney found a way to create these nourishment webinars. David is currently our clinical director. He started out in the mailroom. He found as he grew and wanted to advance himself, he found niches for him. He worked in the continuing care, and then he was a residential therapist, and then he became a primary therapist. And as he has gone, he has gotten the education and made himself relevant to the current needs of the facility or the organization. Jamie is one of our housekeepers. When we realized that we needed to give John a break, Jamie volunteered and made herself relevant by learning how to run the mailroom, learning how to contact suppliers, learning how to do all the things that John did. So she adapted herself into a position so she could stay relevant. So what are those things that we need to do in order to stay relevant as things change in our world? First of all, be knowledgeable and skilled. If there is something you don't know or that might be needed, you need to go in and get that education or that skill set. Maybe it means going back to school. Maybe it just means getting some more training in a particular area. I have long believed that learning is a lifelong experience. And so when I find that there's something I don't know, I will chase it and look for it, kind of like I did with this whole issue of staying relevant. Keep up with the latest in your field. Look at those niche things that might expand what you do to make you an expert in your field. Understand your clients and your customers' needs. This is oftentimes we like to say, I can do really good at this, but when that particular skill set doesn't meet the needs of the people around us, we need to expand and learn what it is that our customers or our clients need, and then learn how to meet that need for them. Stay connected. This is one of those things where and this has been a challenge in the past year for many of us, staying connected. You're doing that by attending these nourishment webinars. But look at the different ways you can stay connected with other people. Maybe you need to learn, I have to learn how to do FaceTime and Duo and all kinds of things so I could stay connected to my family, but also so I could stay connected to people and activities in my sphere of influence. So whether that meant being able to stay connected as far as being a nurse or as an administrator, whatever that is. Specialize in your area. What is it that you do, and what can you do to become more specialized or more relevant to the people that you are serving, whether that's a client or a customer or something like that. One of the ways to do that is to stay focused on the big picture. What is that's needed in the whole? So I can be very, I'm a nurse, so I can be very single-minded when it comes to the tasks that are in nursing. But many years ago, what the facility needed wasn't a really good nurse. They needed somebody that could understand quality and risk. And so I looked at that big picture as far as what the needs were, and then adapted so that I could meet those needs. So looking at things from the big picture and how things um, fit together, how they connect together within an organization or within your own sphere of influence. Focus on communication. This has probably been our biggest challenge over the past year, but it's also probably our biggest success as well. Staying relevant in that ability to communicate with each other, with our patients, our clients, with our families, with the world around us. And I think the last thing is be relevant. What is be willing to be relevant. In other words, put yourself out there and be willing to try something new. Be willing to help out. Be willing to open yourself and be vulnerable. If you don't know something, say that. Find it. Learn it. I think that whole point of being willing to adapt, to change, to adjust to what is going on in your world is probably the biggest um, element of staying relevant. So here's where we reflect over the past year, which was a very interesting year to say the least. Are you relevant in your current work situation? Is what you do relevant to the people that you serve, the needs that need to be met? Are you relevant there? Are you relevant in your personal life? What about the connections within your personal life, your family, your friends? What do they need? It's very interesting that my husband, who is disabled and has limited mobility, looked around himself and found one of the things that was needed in small businesses was someone to kind of champion those. And so he really has gone out and been involved in some of the small businesses, local businesses, and has shopped there, has visited people there. And so he's made himself relevant in his own sphere of influence, which is really interesting. What kinds of things are you willing what kind of changes are you willing to make? What kind of things are you willing to do to adjust, to adapt? And then what is the cost of that? When there's always a cost, but there's also a return on that investment. So if you are willing to make the change, what's that cost going to be like? And then what's that return on the investment? When I went and got my master's, it was an enormous amount of cost as far as financial, but also in time. I was working full time, but the return on the investment was that I was able to have more of an influence in the jobs that I did. So look at that from the perspective of what is the cost of changing and what is that return on the investment. So looking ahead, where do you want to go? What direction are you going? And where do you want to go? I think that's really important. Sometimes what you're doing right now is as relevant as it can get, but then there's other things that maybe you want to do. I'm looking at retirement. That's the direction I'm going to go. What do I need to do to get there? I always have this saying, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because we're all in the process of growing up. What do you want to accomplish? Even as I look towards retirement, I'm looking at what I'm going to accomplish after I leave my formal job. Are you on the right track for the direction that you're going? What are the obstacles? Is it an educational thing? Is it opportunities? And then can you be flexible to adapt and change with the curveballs that life throws at you? Like all of 2020 was one big curveball. And we've all had to learn to adapt and be flexible so that we could grow and change and still be relevant. All right, thank you very much for joining me today, and I will open it up for any questions. One of the questions is what difference does it make? Say you're a therapist, what difference does it make in being relevant? Obviously, therapists are relevant to their patients, their clients, but one of the things to think about is what can help your patient or your client be relevant? One of the things that I experienced as I've been involved in mental health treatment is a lot of times people get the incorrect idea that they have to be completely healed and before they can participate in their life, be relevant to the world around them. So, what can you do as a therapist or as a clinician to help your patient or your client find relevance? So, that's one of those questions that might be really helpful for you in your own practice to think about. What kinds of things can you do to help your patient or your client become relevant in their world? All right. Are there any other questions? Well, thank you very much, all of you, for joining, and we will see you again, hopefully, sometime.